Hello, everyone. For anyone who's spent a lot of time on the internet in the gaming community, I think a lot of people will have noticed that it's very much kind of centralized around the American gaming market or game industry. And by that, I mean, whenever someone talks about video game prices or culture surrounding video games, it's mostly always from the perspective of the US. So how much games cost in the US, what games are popular there, which consoles and which brands are most popular in the US. But as someone from the UK who spends a lot of time obviously online in the gaming community, I have noticed some differences between the US and UK, or I guess European markets, or just differences in around gaming culture in general between the US and the UK and Europe in general. So there are some differences that are going to be pretty obvious. For example, the UK and Europe have a completely different age rating system to the US. In the UK, we have the PEGI system, which has different ages as opposed to E for everyone, M for mature, T for teen, all of that. And there's some games that literally have different cover art. I don't really know why this is a thing. It was definitely much more of a thing in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, more so than right now. But there are still examples of this. For example, Zelda Breath of the Wild, the cover art is different. When things are localized in different regions, they always change things based on cultural differences or what the market is like and what they think will appeal to the market. But then there's some slightly more extreme cases where they haven't just changed the cover art, they've changed the title of the game. For example, Spyro 2 in the US and the UK have different titles. Still called Spyro, but in the UK it's called Spyro 2 Gateway to Glimmer. And I don't know why that is. So those are some of the cosmetic differences. But then there's other differences to touch on. For example, and this is a pretty big one, video game prices. You'd be forgiven to assume that video game prices are pretty much the same across the world. And I don't think there's usually a massive difference from region to region in most cases. But I know that there's some countries where video games are really expensive. In the UK, new games, as in brand new games that have released within the last year or two, are more expensive than in the US. The retail price is higher. I don't know why this is, but it's been like this for ages. This isn't a new thing. And I'll give you some examples. So Kirby Air Riders is $70 in the US. I've taken these prices from Amazon. In the UK, it's currently £56.95, which, if you convert that to US dollars, is $75, almost $76. So that is more expensive. And if you think that this is just a Nintendo game thing, it's not, because if we look at Ghost of Yotei, for example, that came out very recently, that is $69 or basically $70 in the US. And it is £60 in the UK. If you convert that to US dollars, it's $79.79, basically $80. And not only that, but Ghost of Yotei specifically is on sale on Amazon UK at the moment. So if you look at the regular retail price in comparison, the regular retail price is $69.99, which is 93 US dollars. So video games are expensive in the UK. However, that is new games, because retro gaming and secondhand games are kind of a different story. If we look at the secondhand game market, then video games in the UK, generally, if they're secondhand, they're cheaper than secondhand games in the US. And this is something that I think people in the US may have noticed, because if they come across a listing of a PAL game, it's usually cheaper. And it's the same in the UK. Usually if you go on eBay in the UK, you can find PAL region games. You can also find US region games. And the PAL region ones usually are cheaper, but obviously there's, this really depends on the game and how popular it was here, how many copies were printed. But generally speaking, secondhand games are usually cheaper in the UK than they are in the US. And when it comes to retro gaming in particular, because the UK has had a different kind of culture with video game consoles compared to the US, I know that the US historically, during the 70s, 80s, 90s, video game consoles were the thing in the US if you wanted to play video games, whereas in the UK, there was a bit more of a gaming PC culture than it seems that there was in the US. So as a result, it seems that the retro gaming scene isn't quite as big in the UK as it is in the US, which means that prices for most retro games, most, but not all of them, are a bit lower. They're not quite as expensive. But there's certain retro games that are really, really expensive in the US that are either like half the price in the UK or dirt cheap in some cases. I've noticed that it seems Nintendo historically had quite a big dominance over the gaming market in the US, whereas in the UK, Nintendo's always been a very big name in the gaming sphere in the UK, but it didn't have as big of a dominance over Sega back in the day as Nintendo did in the US. And also, then when PlayStation came along, I mean, this was a global thing, but PlayStation definitely led the charge when the original PlayStation came out and PlayStation 2 came out. This was kind of generally across the globe. PlayStation essentially won the console wars for those two generations, if you want to put it that way. And that was also the case in the UK. But on top of that, Nintendo as a brand wasn't as strong here as it is in the US. So, I mean, there were people that had Nintendo consoles. For example, there were people that had the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube, but I didn't know anyone that had either of them. Everyone I knew had a PlayStation or a PS2. As far as home consoles went, I didn't know anyone that had a Nintendo home console at all. Now, handheld gaming was a different story. Nintendo definitely had dominance in the handheld gaming space in the UK as well, but as far as home consoles went, when PlayStation arrived, they kind of took over in the UK, I guess. And I guess it's not just me who's noticed this, because there's people from other countries as well who kind of refer to the UK as Sony land. So it seems that this is kind of something that a lot of people have noticed about the UK, is that PlayStation as a brand is very strong in the UK. It doesn't always outsell Nintendo. For example, during the PlayStation 3 era, obviously that was PlayStation's weakest generation in terms of hardware sales, because they were up against Xbox. They were also up against the Wii. I'm fairly sure that the Wii outsold the PS3 in the UK. I don't have sales data to confirm this, but this is just based off of how many households I know had a Wii versus how many had a PS3. Every household had a Wii, not every household had a PS3, you know? So yeah, in general, PlayStation is a really, really strong brand in the UK especially, and I was kind of wondering why that is, and I've come up with a few theories as to why that is. For one, if you think about video game developers that are based in the UK, either now or in the past, that made some really big, iconic games that became global hits. We've got Rockstar Games. Now, they definitely started off in the UK. I don't know if they're still based in the UK or not. I haven't looked into it, but they started off in the UK. They made the GTA games that are massive. And also, Tomb Raider was developed by a company called Core Design, also based in the UK. Tomb Raider was massive all over the world, but I don't think there's anyone in the UK that does not know who Lara Croft is. So Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, is a very well-recognized brand in the UK. Like Lara Croft transcends video games because there's people that have never played a video game in their life that know who Lara Croft is. And then there's other games, Wipeout, Gran Turismo. As far as I'm aware, they're both also made by British development companies. So, and these are all very big names, very big brands as well in the gaming space. Unsurprisingly, they had pretty big ad campaigns in the UK. It's not surprising that games that were developed in the UK had a lot of push in terms of marketing in the UK. I think Wipeout is somewhat niche in a lot of other countries, but I think Wipeout is fairly known in the UK amongst people that grew up with PlayStation. Gran Turismo obviously is well known everywhere, really, I think. Tomb Raider, very well known everywhere, but especially in the UK. And most of these games were all on PlayStation. So as a result, PlayStation has very strong brand recognition in the UK. So if someone refers to a game console, I think most people think PlayStation first in the UK, more so than Nintendo. And I get the impression that it's probably the other way around in the US. I think I get the impression that people are more likely to think of Nintendo first when they think of game consoles. But again, it kind of depends. And then another interesting thing is if you go on YouTube, and this is something I found kind of cool, there's 2 official Sony YouTube channels, as far as I'm aware. There might be more than 2, but there's only 2 that I've come across. There's the official PlayStation YouTube channel, which has like 15 million subscribers or something. And then there's PlayStation Access, which is this group of people that play video games. And this is an official PlayStation channel, by the way. It's officially owned by Sony, as far as I'm aware, because I did look into it. And PlayStation Access, the people that host that channel are all from the UK. And that's very interesting because Sony is a Japanese company, but if they wanted international representation in that kind of way, then usually it would be hosted by Americans, like 90% of the time. And I don't really know why that is. I haven't looked into it, but I just thought that was interesting. It kind of took me a little bit off guard. I was like, oh, they're British. I'm sure that people who aren't American can relate to this. It's very unusual for something like that to happen, right? Unless it's literally a British company in the first place. And something that I found very interesting is that the vast majority of YouTubers that are clearly either Nintendo fans or mostly talk about Nintendo on their channels, most of them are American. And then every time I come across a YouTube channel where they're mostly talking about PlayStation, or they clearly have a lot of PlayStation games, or, you know, they're usually from the UK. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that. It might just be me, but yeah, that's just a pattern I've noticed. I found it really interesting. For reference, I was born in 1997, so some of this is based off of my own observations and things I've noticed growing up. And then the other stuff is things that I've heard or read online from people that are older than me and that went through the previous gaming generations. I have noticed that I think a few people that watch my channel have they think that I'm a Nintendo fan or something. And I don't really like to consider myself as a fan of any of the specific platforms or these companies. As far as which one I prefer, it's actually PlayStation. Again, because PlayStation was just so big when I was growing up. It was kind of unrivaled, really. But yeah, if you've noticed any differences, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.